All right, everybody. Good evening. How are you? How is it going, man? Good evening. My name is Likan Olawoye, and I wanted to come and say hi to you this evening. I'm so excited. I'm so pumped up for this session. It's going to be just an incredible session. And I need you to be ready, to be amped up, to be engaged, right? Because this is an opportunity to actually have a conversation and to build. If you don't know, right, BPTN is the largest network of Black tech in Canada, top 2 or 3 in the US, right? We are building a platform for Black professionals to connect, to build, to network, to grow their careers. Because we know that if we're not intentional about it, we'll miss an opportunity. We know that historically systems and processes have not been set up, right, for Black tech professionals to do well, not because, you know, they're not smart, not because they're not engaged, right, but because there's a network gap. So our goal is to reduce and remove that network gap and actually ensure that the best folks in tech get those opportunities, right? And we bet on Black, right, a lot of the times. Right. So, you know, thank you so much for being here. Right. Thank you for leaning in. We have a full house today. I keep saying it every time, but I miss you all. I miss being in spaces and rooms with you and the energy that you just bring. But you know what? We're also building an incredible global audience. So we're so pumped, you know, to have you here. Now, for folks who've not been here before, right, if this is your first time at a BPTN event, right, we don't take passive, you know, folks. You need to be active, so you don't get to, you know, listen to a BPTN or be at a BPTN event and cook. You're gonna miss too much stuff, or be on the phone. That's not how we do it. You need to be fully engaged and fully engulfed in the conversations, because we bring conversations to you that are not Googleable, right? So we bring engagement to you that you live and you learn and you build it in with us. So it's gonna be important. So the first thing is, we have the Cibc talent acquisition team, you know, in the meeting. I'm just gonna ask them to say hi to you. What does that mean? If you're looking for an opportunity, if you wanna be engaged, if you wanna build, you know, a career, right? And you think, you know, there's an opportunity for you that you wanna connect with them, right? They're just gonna be saying hi to you in a moment, right? Please ping them, say hi to them on the side, right? Have a conversation with them. They're excited to be able to connect with you and build with you, right? So they're gonna be here all night, really just building with you. So please connect in with them, right? The second thing that I wanna go into is I wanna make sure I feel your energy before we start, you know, anything. I need to feel your energy. So at the beginning of every session, I ask the conversation. I ask you some questions, right? So we're gonna start with some questions tonight, and you need to lean in. I already see folks, you're not first timers, you know how to do this. So I'm gonna ask you, firstly, so get ready. There's a chat function right at the bottom, right? Right there at the bottom, right? I want you to basically get ready, and I'm gonna ask you some questions. I need you to type it in there because I wanna see who is here, you know, and where are you from? So first of all, I wanna know, what city are you attending this event from right now? Just type it in there. Atlanta is always showing love. Okay, Montreal, Toronto, Winnipeg, Dallas. All right, Oakville, Vancouver, San Fran, of course, is in the house. Mississauga, I see you. Toronto, Burlington, Phoenix, Arizona, welcome. The 6 all day. Virginia, I just saw Virginia go by. Awesome. Toronto is holding it down. Edmonton is in the house. There you go. Waterloo, Pickering, Jersey City. Welcome. San Diego, welcome, 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 folks. Whitby, is good to see you. Richmond Hill, right? Is that Inglewood I just saw, or did I just go by real quick? Welcome, welcome. So the next thing I'm gonna ask you is, if there's something, Mountain View, what's up, Derek? Right? If there's one thing you want to leave here with tonight, right, or today, right, from folks in the West Coast, right? If there's one thing you want to leave this session with, right, what is that? Give me one word. What is that one word? And all the speakers are listening and looking, so please say something. You want community, mentorship, networking, best practices, supports. What else? Tell me one thing. Community. Man, community is so important to us. Awesome. Knowledge, client engagement. There you go. Business, truth, hope, inspiration. You want to be inspired. You want to build best practices for ERGs. Support, right? An opportunity. Absolutely. That's awesome. That is awesome. That is great. That is great. That is great. You want to be connected to Black professionals. 100% contacts. Absolutely. The last question I'm going to ask you is this. Over the last month, 2 months or so, right? We've realized, a bit annoying, but we realized that, like Black folks have been just, unfortunately, it's been a bit tougher for us, right? 400 years later, but we seem to be waking up right now, right? If, as a Black professional that is in the meeting, right, and as an ally that is in the meeting, tell me what you've seen now, today that you hadn't seen before in the last, before the last 2 weeks, right? Opportunities, opportunities, action. Okay, what else? Folks, goals, a platform, voice. You see allies showing up, Chris, right? There you go. Focus on hiring, engagement, real change, hope, energy. Awesome. Awesome. A voice. Man, that is so important, right? Desire to change. Yep, we're feeling it every day here at BPTN. Action. We're so excited to see, that there is actually some real commitments, that there's open and honest conversations. And my Blackness, I'm so unapologetic about it, and I hope you are too, right? Acknowledgement. That's awesome. We are so pumped up, right, to be able to have this conversation and to bring you together. And we wanted to thank again CIBC, for your engagement, for your leadership within Black tech ecosystem, right? The CIBC team is fantastic, and thank you for your leadership and for your partnership around this. So if you've not been at a BPTN event before, you're getting to know us. We're not very passive, right? We're intentional, right? As you see on the shirt, we're incredibly intentional about what we do, right? So you can't just sit in a meeting with us and, just chill, right? You got to engage. So I need you to add us up, right? On social platforms, right? Just, that QR code right there will take you to our website, right? If you're not a member yet, you could be a Black professional, you could be an ally, get connected in with us. Make sure you are connected in, because it's absolutely important to be connected in. And also, I need you on social tonight. Talk about 1 or 2 things. You're about to hear some nuggets from folks today. I guarantee you, right? Don't just take that in by yourself, but share it. It is about community, right? We build community here at BPTN. So we want you to be engaged and to be locked in, and we want you to be connecting in. Let folks outside of this event know what's happening in the event, right? Make sure your voice is heard and help us amplify this voice in the ecosystem. So please be engaged, be locked in. We're pumped to be able to connect in with you. So we are really excited about something. I want to show you something, right? We are really, really excited about the opportunity to be able to bring you the BFUTR Summit. It is the largest event for Black tech professionals ever. 10,000 plus globally around the world. If you've not heard about it, you've been under a rock, and I need you to stop, right, and pay attention, right? I'm going to play you a little video to tell you a little bit more about the summit, and we want to make sure that you are there. So sit tight and hear us out.
Welcome to BFUTR 2020, the largest virtual gathering of Black tech professionals ever, presented by TD Bank. BFUTR is Tech Summit, Career Fair, and Networking, now all virtual. From in the lobby, you can access the auditoriums, exhibitor booths, lounge, and info desk. Just click on the room you need to be in and voila, you've arrived. On the main stage, our lineup is jam-packed with tech leaders from numerous industries, all sharing trends, teachings, and inspiration for what the future holds. streaming to you from our TV studio in Toronto. Once you join the session, you can view the program of speakers and ask questions via the Q&A button to the left of the session video. Be sure to check out the other sessions taking place in the side stage. There will be rapid-fire talks, panel discussions, and Q&As. Take a virtual tour of our exhibitor hall. Our partners are excited to provide information sessions and interviews. You can engage with company representatives and other participants in real time via the chat function. You can also watch videos and exchange documents like resumes or links. Talk about on-the-spot opportunities. Take a break and meet new faces in the lounge. Engage with speakers, leaders, and peers in public or private conversation, with or without video. Talk to anyone in the room, from anywhere in the world, all through the chat function. And if you have questions or technical difficulties, you can connect with our customer service at the information desk in the lobby. BPTN is proud to host you at BFUTR 2020. We're innovating to bring you networking and professional development like never before. Get your passes now.
So if you've not heard it before, right, this is an opportunity, and we are so pumped up to have you at BFUTR. It's happening the 22nd and 23rd of October, right, and it's going to be global, right? Streaming live from Toronto, we're going to have global leaders on our stage. You think this is community with over, almost 300 people on this call? It is going to be incredible with over 10,000 people from around. You're going to be able to connect in a really, really authentic way. Right now, today, right, we're going real fast. The tickets are selling, right? Make sure you reserve your spot today. Click on that QR code. It is going to be awesome, right? We're going to just have a blast, right? And we are going to change the way the Black tech professionals are looked at. Not only are companies going to hire, they're going to engage, they're going to build weight. You're going to be able to have conversations with directly, like, through video. You're going to see global, companies on our stages, global CEOs and executives on our stages. This is our moment, right? COVID has been devastating to our community across Canada and the US, right? This, historical racism has been devastating to us in the Black tech community. No longer. This is our opportunity and this is our moment. So we look forward to seeing you. Make sure you use your phone, click on that QR code, go on the summit site, right? And make sure we'll see you there on October 22nd and 23rd. We'll keep telling you more, but we're really, really excited about it. So I am so incredibly excited about this opportunity. This amazing leader, Elise, is gonna come to the stage, right? And she does incredible things, right, with community, right? Within CIBC, she's a leader. Outside of CIBC, she's a leader. And we're so, so blessed and excited to be able to have her on our platform today, right? So please make sure that, you give a round of applause, right, to Elise. Thank you so much, Elise, for being here, right? Welcome to the BPTN stage, sis. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited. I'm super pumped. I've, been wanting to come to this stage for a really long time and talk to my community, here globally around the world, and just really dig into some of the issues that we're seeing now. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for the introduction. So I thought I would take this moment to kind of introduce myself. I've just started to make the rounds and talking around some of the issues that are happening. Specifically, really, really excited to talk a little bit about my journey and how it relates to employee resource groups, how I've interacted with them in the corporate and tech, and just really anchor, my experience, as I know many of us have had, with anti-Black racism, and how we can move forward and seize this moment. So one of the most important things that I thought about over the last little bit was, how is my journey? What did I learn? What worked? What didn't work? And how are the ways that I want to see us move forward, in the future? So one of the biggest things is I didn't really start in tech. I didn't start in corporate. I was in film and music. And I spent a number of years really pursuing a career completely in the arts, completely separate from corporate and tech. And I say this because how I entered this particular, avenue of work was, one, I am, technologist at heart. I build computers, I code. And what was really important to me was, as I kind of shifted into corporate and tech, how do I get into this space? It wasn't something I had spent a lot of time doing before outside of a hobby. And that meant I had to start, from the ground up and really look at frontline. So I started, in corporate and tech, on the front lines, doing calls, taking calls with a lot of, clients. And one of the really interesting things about that was I spent probably about 6 to 7 years really, really struggling to gain upward mobility. And I know that that is something that, a lot of Black women, a lot of Black people can relate to in terms of being able to move forward and up and out. And one of the biggest things around that for me was I had to get really strategic, right? Because the opportunities just wouldn't really present themselves. And I really had to sometimes, take contract roles. I probably in the first 7 years of my experience did maybe 3 or 4 different lateral positions and moves. I also spent a lot of time thinking around taking roles that nobody would want and putting my stamp on them, making the best. And honestly, I think it's really interesting when you think about the Black experience globally, and we think about some of, our ability to just continue to respond, to thrive, to, just our strength in that regard, that we will make, lemonade out of lemons, as we know. And I just, one of the areas that really, really was important to me was if no one would give me the opportunity, I would make that opportunity myself. And in the beginning of that career, 6 to 7 years, did that. Sooner than that, I got an opportunity to do some job shadowing and went into process engineering. And somebody hired me not because I had the background or the education, but because I had the potential and I had the soft skills, and I really just needed that bit of a leg up. And I earned it, and that's not to underscore that I was not skilled for it, but that somebody took a look at why I wasn't, in certain roles, or why I hadn't moved forward, already being at the bank for so long. And so that was a really big shift. And one thing to think about as you're moving up and having that upward mobility is that, at one point I really just thought about leaving the industry, right? Because it gets so frustrating. It's something that it becomes almost insurmountable to think about, okay, well, this is not an area where I can succeed. And I'll come back to that, because I think when we think about Black talent in organizations, we spend a lot of time on procurement, and that's incredibly important. Acquiring talent, creating connections to communities, to Black communities, to organizations, to grassroots organizations that are there doing the work day in and day out when it's not something sexy, when it's not something that everyone's talking about. That's incredibly important, create those pipelines. But it doesn't mean anything if when you get to an organization and that organization isn't ready for you to be there. If that organization doesn't have the systems and the support in place for you to be fostering workspaces and places for Black people to succeed. So that was, really one of the areas that really spoke to me, and something I learned about my journey. So, in terms of my relationships with, ERGs or employee resource groups, it's really interesting. I thought a little bit about this before this event, and 10 years ago, and I know there's a lot of people here who are not from Canada. Canada, has a very interesting, relationship to thinking about historical racism and anti-Black racism specifically, where, 10 years ago, I honestly couldn't say the word Black even at an organization without, somebody being like, or really being uncomfortable with that. And so a lot of time was really spent thinking about, how do I talk in code? So when I was in ERGs, or when I had, been in corporate and been in those experiences, a lot of the time, even when we were in ERGs, you would be networking, which was amazing. You would have such community, but the focus really was on having an outlet for that to network. And what I've really seen is ERGs kind of shift into more strategic development, being a resource for organizations, for CEOs, for C-suites, to sort of look at pipelines for talent. And that's a really, really interesting place. for employee resource groups to kind of move to. One, I think, it's obviously incredibly important. It's such a great area to focus in on and hone in on. But one of the really big things to think about is, as you lean on these groups to do more of this work that really is, a full-time job, it's not a side of the desk type of activity, we really need to be thinking about how do we enable and afford these groups the ability to do that. And when I think a lot about that, one of the main pillars for me in looking at ERGs is really just they're a reflection of workplace culture. So, the fact that 10 years ago we couldn't really talk about being Black, you couldn't necessarily have, a sponsor that was really representative of your community because we don't have as much representation in boards because of that historical inequity. When we think about that moving forward, we really need to think about how these C-suites or your sponsors are playing a much more active role in the stability of those ERGs, listening, creating constant dialogue, thinking about, how do we bring them to the table? How do we have those dialogues around talent, measurable outcomes, and deliverables? But again, as we shift to that, we really need to think about, well, if our ERGs are doing a lot more than they used to, if we're leaning on them in this way, if they're doing all these roles, how do we compensate for that? And that's a really novel concept. I mean, I have not heard of a lot of organizations that really, have landed on a way to do that meaningfully. But it's something as we move forward, especially, in the movement that we are now for Black lives around the world, we have to think about compensation. And the reason I say that is because it is an emotional tax, right? We know that the work that we do day in and day out, one is for survival, but it's also, it's something that we have a burden to bear in that sense of, every day we're struggling in our day-to-day lives, or maybe flourishing too, right? But as we see the violence of anti-racism continuously perpetuate, and then being leaned on in this way at work, we have to balance that, with the right type of compensation models, whether it's bonus structures, whether it's thinking about carving out actual work within, performance that relates to ERGs and that work that's done. There are different ways to think about it. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but that's something that I feel really, really, really passionate about, especially as I see the shift moving into the organizations. One of the other things that was really, really important to me is, 10 years ago, a C-suite member would come to an event maybe once, leave kind of early, wouldn't really participate. There wasn't an ongoing dialogue. Transparency and trust cannot be overstated. If you really want to change culture, we have to think about how we are creating constant dialogue. I mean, we need to move beyond awareness. Racism is a fact. Inequity is a fact. But what we need to do is have the dialogue to talk about the experiences that are happening right in front of us. And if they're not right in front of us, how do you make sure you're aware of that? And that, traditionally in tech and corporate can be a little bit difficult because, specifically in corporate more, but the areas of, bureaucracy that happen, and there's so many layers before someone can actually know there's an issue. And, that really leads me into thinking about employee relations and the role that that needs to play as we move forward. A lot of time, in my early career, if I had experiences that were really anti-Black or racist or, sexist as we cross the intersection, I didn't really have an avenue. Sometimes the people that were perpetrating those particular experiences were my one-ups. They were my managers. They were my peers. I didn't necessarily have the tools or an outlet with which to talk about those things. And so I really think we have to think about, the wake-up call that everyone else is having now, non-Blacks, around the violence and the pervasiveness of anti-Black racism. We need to think about the racial trauma, right? And that is something that's always existed, but not always been acknowledged. And a lot of the time, I think, for me, specifically in my experience, I've internalized a lot of that and thought, I had to have a stiff upper lip, not really talk about it. And so as we move to supporting ERG, supporting employees, we need to think about how do we create spaces for this to happen, and how do we embed this particular mental health and, dealing with the racial trauma as part of the actual organization, which means that, I can call an HR line and they are well versed in dealing with my experience. They're not defensive, they're not dismissive. They understand, they're taking notes about it. If they seek constant calls, if they see trends that are happening, they're measuring that and they're watching it. And then they're acting accordingly. That's the accountability that I think we just need to get to. Beyond just listening and hearing, these are all really important, but without action and then measurable outcomes, it really just becomes an outlet for honestly for Black pain to continue to circulate, and that's not really going to move us out of where we are now and into the future, where we want to see the type of equity and support that across organizations. So I think for me that is incredibly important to think about, the tax and the employee relations role and the role HR needs to play. I personally think that HR really needs to be looked at overall as we support those groups and empower HR to do more than be an advocate in and only in pay and conversations, but to have that lens and to constantly be looking at how are we participating in this particular structure. And that's a question when we think about anti-racist principles, needs to be something everybody asks at a constant dialogue. And I don't care if we put it on posters, if we put those principles, beside my desk, a sticky on the background, it needs to be pervasively done, so that we are all seeing and hearing that message coming from the top. So, one of the things that was really interesting is I read a Catalyst piece around how 33 to 50% of Black, East Asian, South Asian professionals just feel on guard all the time. So when you think about anti-racism and you think about the role that it plays and thinking about those principles, we are on guard all the time. That is us waiting for these experiences to happen because they've been happening so often and so long. And so I think as we move forward, that's just something we really need to be thinking about. And when we think about anti-racism principles, and I focus a lot on this because, for me, it really needs to be about more than just policy. That's important, but CEOs change, organizations change. And so we really need to think about how we want to foster that talent and, creating opportunities, connecting our Black talent to mentors, to sponsors. I didn't really have, a real sponsor until probably in the last 4 to 5 years. I really didn't understand what that relationship was about or how to foster that because I wasn't tapped on the shoulder as many, other people are. And so for me, it's made an incredible difference. And now having that type of sponsorship and specifically that sponsorship with non-Black allies is incredibly important because they're at the table and they can bring you to the table. And that's not to say, again, like I said, our community is vastly talented, vastly educated. But if the doors aren't open for those opportunities, we won't get the opportunity to even showcase that education and that talent. And so to me, that's been a really, really integral part of, the upper mobility of the last 5 years of my career to be a senior leader at Cibc. And so when I think about, for the Black community, for Black women, for men, along the intersections of persons with disabilities, we really need to think about surrounding ourselves with support. We think about ERGs, obviously, with that, but I think also creating the networks within your role and outside. I think about self-esteem and how that plays in, that emotional tax, that piece around making sure we're not internalizing a lot of the activities that are happening to us. That's really, really easy to say, obviously. But I think the relationship between an emotional, your self-esteem, the trauma, as well as making sure we have avenues from employee, resource groups, but also from our HR areas, and really looking at them expanding their role and their connection to the community so that it's more of that dialogue is incredibly important. And then naturally, when we have that dialogue, I really, really feel that we are going to get to a place where we're going to be seeing, a lot more action, and we have to demand it. This is the other piece that's really important to me. When I was in my career, again, for the very beginning of it, and even up to the last 5 years, I would say I wasn't really asking for much. It was very difficult for me personally to think about how to not be too overt because I was already so visibly there in the office, and I was trying to mitigate, my Blackness to some degree. And I cannot tell you in the last 5 years how freeing it has been to bring my whole self to work. and to really have a space where I could bring all of that, my Blackness, my history, my culture, but also, being sure that like I had a soft spot to land and that what was accepted of me. And so I think that's incredibly important, and that's what dialogue creates on a regular basis. And making sure that ERGs also have a space to talk directly to the top. So no middlemen, there needs to be a level of engagement that is extremely transparent. And I think, in closing, when I think about these experiences, it's really, really important for us to move beyond acknowledgement. I'm tired. We're all extremely tired. This isn't a new issue for us, but for allies, as you're leaning into this, be really, really careful about your engagement of your Black talent, of your employees, and how they participate as we move forward. I think it's okay to have, people that are active and wanting to engage, but some people may not feel that comfortable. And so we have to think about making sure we're not, completely draining those resources for this, the idea generation, the way to move forward, do the work, do the homework outside of that, and then identify who wants to participate and allow them to do so in a safe way. But that work cannot all come from just Black talent and Black ERGs. That has to be work that's done outside. And we need to hold the flowery language, speak plainly. We're past the point of hearing a conversation only about diversity and inclusion. We need to be specific. So long our issues have been hidden behind, the word diversity and inclusion and visible minorities, and it's gone, completely unaware for many people, even though it's been very much a part of our experience. And so I think we need to hold the flowery language. We need to stop the vagueness, be specific and intentional. We need to use our data. We need to measure. We need to listen and learn. We need to act on toxic cultures. I'll leave you with this thought. One of the beginnings of my career, we had someone who, really didn't really act on these anti-racist principles and didn't really think that, this was incredibly important to move forward. And I remember my leader at the time thinking, oh my gosh, well, we really have to bring him in, and what if he wants to leave? And my thought then that I couldn't say, but I can say now very, very articulately is, that's okay. Because if that person is not ready to go on that journey with you and your organization, where you've been public, where you've been committed to that, then that's probably not a person that you want to take with you moving forward. And that's okay. There is an area where we will lose some people along the way, but that's part of us being committed to the journey and to really doing more than just representing where we are now, but representing where we want to be. Thank you.
Wow. You all heard Elise just crush that? Yeah, Karen, wow. She crushed that. She wasn't having that. She said, no more flowery language. I was looking at the chat, I'm like, she's dropping gems. She said, no more flowery language. Man, she said, toxic culture. We gotta get rid of toxic culture. I'm just appreciating the no more flowery language stuff. Y'all need to give her a hand, virtual hand. She crushed that. At least thank you so much. That was absolutely impressive. Stop with the vague language. Ooh, we tired. Ooh, that's gems. Those are gems. Thank you so much for gracing our stage. I'm so excited to see the work that you're doing over at CIBC and even in the community. Thank you for just being awesome, right? So we're about to dig into the next one. Remember, as I said earlier, right? You were looking for, engagement with CIBC, right? You have, the TA folks, in the meeting, right? They're going to say hi again, right? Make sure you're engaging with them directly, just directly connect with them, right? And there's always opportunities. Clearly, CIBC is just leaning into this conversation. So we want to make sure that, solid Black tech talent, right, is also getting an opportunity. We are unapologetic about, Black tech professionals moving in and moving up. So please make sure you're engaging with the TA folks. So we're about to jump into this panel discussion. This panel discussion is going to be fire. It's going to be incredible. We are so lucky and so blessed to have 5 amazing leaders from across North America, right? You know, Akil from CIBC holding it down. Shav, you know, she's about to crush it from Shopify, right? Of course, we have Microsoft show up in terms of, you know, John, Monica, all the way from Atlanta, you know, Salesforce, you know, global president, right? Anitra, you know, all the way up, obviously from Lyft, she's from West Coast, right? We are so excited about to have this conversation. Before we started, remember the Q&A buttons at the bottom, right? You want to ask questions, right? We're gonna ask someone. I'm gonna be looking directly, right? So please, I want you to put your hands together virtually, right? And welcome these 5 amazing, brilliant Black leaders to the stage. Thank you all so much, right, for being here. You know, you can put yourself off of mute, right? I'm gonna leave the screen in a moment, and you know, just like, you know, have you center stage. So welcome. Thank you so much, team, for having me, right? And for, you know, for saying what's up to the folks. So, you know, Akil, say hi to the team. How are you doing?
Hi, everyone. Good. I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Lee Ken. Really looking forward to this conversation. And Ali started it off with fire.
It's fire. Anitra, how are you?
Yes. Hey, everyone. Good evening. My name's Anitra Brown, representing Lyft today, and just super excited to have this conversation. I'm feeling pumped just from that keynote, and so many gems were dropped that I would love to just use as an anchor for our conversation as well.
Absolutely. Shav, say what's up to the people.
Hey, everybody. Very excited to be here. Really interested and excited in having some real talk, some real conversations. Also myself still reeling off of that fire keynote presentation. So just want to keep that energy in this conversation.
Absolutely. John, what's up?
Hey, no flowery language. We're going to keep it real. Thanks for having us. It's going to be a great conversation.
Absolutely. Monica.
Hey guys, good evening. So excited to be here. Timely conversation, keeping it all the way real. Elise, you did a great job and can't wait to talk.
All right, let's dig right into it. So remember, folks, right, you have a question, please put it in the Q&A box. I'll be, you know, making sure I'm weaving it in, right? And use your chat function. Engage with each other. This is not the time to be passive. We need you absolutely fired up in this conversation. So let's start with, you know, supporting your ERGs. Let's start with, like, what are ERGs for, right? It's a very simple piece, but there's folks in the audience, right, that are thinking about, how do I start an ERG? What, you know, what should it be used for? What is the mandate of it? Like, I would love to hear, you know, let's start with Monica and then folks just jump in. Like, what are ERGs for? What should they be used for?
Yeah, well, for starters, an ERG is for any group or employee group that's underrepresented. So think about your Black employee community, Latinx, LGBTQ community, any group that's at a company that does not have adequate representation. That's who needs an ERG group. So if you don't have an ERG group and you're in an underrepresented population, you need to start one. So that's number one. The other thing is advocacy. So the needs of that community will vary from anything like the climate we're in now to understanding what the company should be doing to respond to those people in that community. And again, because they're underrepresented, their voices are going to be smaller, and so they're going to need more advocacy because of the group. And so those are two of the bigger things. And then the most fun part are things like this, building community. I feel like community is king, especially right now. And so you need community and you need ERG groups to build that community for those days that are hard, or those days that you just need somebody to lean on because, again, you're in an underrepresented population.
Awesome.
Yeah, Lee Ken, if I can, I'll jump in because I love how you started that, Monica. Like, it's all about community, right? It's all about creating a safe place for people who feel underrepresented in their organization to come together, network, and share their experiences together. But even in our climate today, it's much beyond just building an internal community that's internal facing. It's all about advocacy within the organization. And one of the ways I look at it is, especially in light of what's going on right now, the ERG's role growingly and increasingly should be to hold up a mirror to the organization and say, you know, are we really as an organization reflecting the communities that we serve? Are we really doing the right things from an inclusion and diversity perspective? And how do we ensure that we take the right action and measurable action to drive change, right? So I think, you know, Elise mentioned it in her keynote that, you know, there's a shift from social gathering and connecting and having conversations about culture and heritage, and really moving forward with an advancement agenda and an advocacy agenda within the organization.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind adding on to that. So we talked a little bit, or what I heard said before was about having something that was actually for you. So depending on what your focus on, what your group is, make sure that when you create an ERG, that you're creating one that actually advocates for your voice. Having just created an ERG in Canada, it was really interesting to understand people's view that, you know, maybe you belong to this group or that group. Don't take it, you know, don't take it for granted that somebody else is going to create an organization or a group that represents you. If you don't see one that fits for you, go create one. Go get your voice, create your organization, and get people to actually start to listen to what you have to say.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, I would love to dig into what Akil just spoke about, which I thought was really powerful, right? You know, early on in my career, and I think, you know, most of our careers, ERGs was like, you'll do international, you know, Black Day, maybe you'll do something for Caravana, right? Or you'll do something for Black History Month, and deuces, that is it, right? You showed up. There's Black people in our organization and we feel connected, right? How now, during this time and this moment, should ERGs be used? How should we be supporting companies and our companies internally? Shab, I would love to hear from you on this.
Yeah, I think Elise spoke to it a little bit in her keynote, which is just, we need to leverage Black voices in ERGs to help impact how we're building our companies, like, to be honest with you. And it's not putting the work on the Black community, it's doing the work yourself as an organization to build a more inclusive environment internally. It's not just about attracting Black talent, it's about how we can retain and empower Black talent when they're in our organizations and they join our organizations. So I think that we can leverage employee resource groups to be more than just that, like, yes, Black History Month, of course, but like, it's more than that. Black employees can help us identify business opportunities, product opportunities. It's more than just about the talent acquisition, but talent acquisition, product opportunities, how to engage and retain the community internally, and really how to build like a sustainable organization that is going to stand the test of time, how to be successful. It's not, again, I really caution companies who are putting a lot of the work on their employee resource group members because they got full-time jobs. And when it comes to performance and compensation, that's what they're going to be like, that's what they're going to be looked at, their jobs, just not necessarily as extra work. So, you know, if like, use them for sure, but do the work yourself, get your hands dirty, and don't expect people to fix the problem for you. But it's a great opportunity for awareness to engage with your employee resource groups.
And to that point, I know the question was more geared towards how do the employee resource groups support the business, but I also think one key aspect is how is the business creating opportunities for the ERG to contribute and to support business initiatives. And so when we think about, I mean, I'm sounding repetitive here probably, but we know that we're beyond ERGs being social clubs and that there's so much more than just programming during affinity months. I mean, ERGs are uniquely positioned right now to have direct impact on business strategies. And I think it's really on the onus of the company, whether it's the I&D department or, you know, whoever has some sort of, or the exec sponsors, I would say, but folks who have the opportunity to uplift voices, it's important that we keep that in mind and, you know, consider what are the opportunities to put our ERG leaders in the room with folks that are making decisions. Because without that, I think we're missing the piece of the opportunity for ERGs to have that true influence.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I would add is,
oh, we lost you. Did you go on mute, Akil?
of things, and then
He's
they
saying
produce.
something really good.
We lost you a little bit, Akil. We want you to repeat that. All right, let's move on to Monica. Tell me what you're thinking, Monica.
Yeah, I think so. I love what Shav said, that we can't put the burden on the Black employees or your ERG to deliver the business results. But I do believe there is a function of an ERG that should be considered like a business resource group. So there's a lot of things that the business, after implementing, after listening to the community, after amplifying the voices of the community, there are a lot of things that will be impacting that organization and frankly, the bottom line. And so the employee resource group creating resources like your business resource group will actually impact that bottom line of that company when they're more effective. So if they're increasing diversity, if they're like I heard someone say, you know, you're getting more diverse products, you're getting more diverse voices at the table, you're getting more innovation and creativity at the table. That wasn't there before. And I think it was Anitra that said having a voice in the room where the executives are, which is a huge piece of that. So you have to be aligned to an executive sponsor if you're an ERG leader. It's like a non-negotiable. And it can't just be any executive sponsor. You need to have at least one executive sponsor that is a direct report of at least the CEO. Someone that is in the room making decisions and that you can ask questions to that can actually answer them for you. And if you don't know if you're talking to the right level, if they don't answer the questions correctly, you're talking to the wrong level. So if they can't answer your questions sufficiently, you need to get a higher level exec sponsor.
That is huge. I think that is so important. So, you know, we find at times that ERGs, you know, are internal, where we're helping Black, you know, professionals and Black tech professionals feel good. But you find that some of them actually don't have a lot of teeth, right? And are not able to move the needle for some of their members, right? So I love the idea about like, no, we need to be very close to the CEO, right? We need to be one level removed at the most, right? It shows, you know, like this is serious, not this is, you know, as someone said earlier, sort of a social club only. Like this is a business, you know, opportunity, as well as, of course, people need to feel like they're engaged, they're included, they're supported. So I wanted to talk a little bit more just to you all about like self-care. So, you know, I wake up at 5 a.m. and I start to speak to, you know, leaders in England. Then, you know, we move our way to then to sort of the East Coast and then to the West Coast, you know, as the West Coast is now waking up, right? I'm sure you all are like leaning in, day out. Like, how are you thinking about like self-care right now? You know, and how would you help others that who are in this meeting also think about self-care?
What a question. I think for me, I've been trying to compartmentalize things, which I know isn't always the advice they give you, but I think with being, you know, in a work from home environment right now, the lines feel blurred sometimes when I'm working and not working. And so I've been trying to draw a line for myself in that I've had, because, you know, I do diversity and inclusion work as a profession, I have personal people in my life reach out who are, you know, motivated and energized by the movement that's happening right now. And they're asking for help. So they want playbooks and resources and articles and things that I just don't have the capacity or bandwidth to organize and give to them. And so I've been, you know, trying to share and encourage them to, you know, do their research because I honestly don't have the bandwidth to do that and do that same work for my job. So I've been trying to separate that, and, you know, people in my life have been pretty respectful. But also I've just been trying to disconnect when I can and, you know, focus on the things that make me happy, which is like some of my self-care routine as well. So yeah, but it's been a struggle. I haven't perfected it yet. So I'd love to hear other people's perspective.
So Anitra, I think one of the key things is at least you've acknowledged the fact that you need that self-care. And I think sometimes you can get caught up in the moment of pushing hard, trying to help others, do your day job, and then at the same time run your ERG and try to, again, have as big an impact as possible. The biggest thing that happens when you, or first thing that happens when you get on a plane is what they tell you. In an emergency, put your mask on first. Like, you got to take care of yourself before you can go take care and help someone else. So whatever it is you do, like whether it's, you know, playing a video game, going for a walk, spending time with family, cooking, it's important to make that time for yourself to kind of take care. Otherwise, if you're burnt out and you're burning the candle at both ends, it's not going to end well.
Yeah. Like, I mean, one of the sources of exhaustion can be just sharing your experiences and your stories with allies and others who are trying to learn and understand. So sort of like Superman flies up and he floats in space and the sun re-energizes him. You got to find that anchor that gives you your energy back, right? Like for me, it's my family. You know, Amitra, you mentioned we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're all working from home. Boundaries are blurred. But when you shut that door and you connect with, you know, your people, right, who ground you, that's the source of energy, right? You can have real conversations. You can let your guard down. You know, you don't have to, you know, be as emotionally drained and exhausted, and you can re-energize yourself. Because it's important to re-energize yourself. You got to go back the next day, and this time we have to go back the next day and be prepared to have the same conversation. Literally, the phone's ringing off the dial, and it's, hey, can you join me for a listening session? Hey, can you help me understand what my leaders can do? So you have to be prepared to answer the call, but you need that forum to re-energize, just like Superman flies up to the sun.
I would love to talk a bit more. Come on, do you want to add to that?
No.
Well, the only thing,
Or is that Shav? Monica and then Shav.
The only thing I would add, and I'm pretty sure everyone would agree, I'm a huge advocate for therapy. And so part of that self-care process, if you believe in therapy, is going to a therapist. And if you don't have a therapist, or again, most organizations support it, we actually partnered with our employee benefits group to actually provide therapy sessions for our Black employees during this time. So we hired a Black therapist to come in, and he's doing sessions for groups of up to 12 people, because there's a lot of traumatic stuff that we're going through and we're processing, and we're not getting it out, and we're not taking the time to heal from it or process it. And frankly, just know when to say no when you're being asked a lot of things, and take time for yourself. So that was the only thing I wanted to add.
Yeah, and I was just gonna add, like, it's really hard to stop working for me personally. I know the alternative to me not creating this change and not doing this work like midnight is that the generation behind me is gonna have to do this work, and I don't want that to happen. And I find that it's really easy to spin, and that like the boundaries start to get blurred because you feel this onus to create the change yourself. And, you know, until the pandemic hit, and until, you know, the recent events, which are not recent, they've been happening for hundreds of years, but until the world started to listen, I just recently was just like, you know what? I'm not even gonna put pressure to figure out what I'm doing, but I'm just gonna create space and time in my calendar. And when I'm in that time and when I'm in that space, I'll figure out what I need to do for myself. And I found that like that has just been really helpful, because the pressure to do self-care right is a whole next story that we can get into. So that's just like something I'd say, like, if you need to start somewhere, just create the space, and you can figure out what to do in that space when you're in it.
I love that idea. You know, funny thing is, I had spoken to a bunch of Black executives about, like, you know, have you ever had a Black executive coach, right? 10 out of 10 said no, never had one. Never. Do those exist? Those are like unicorns. And, you know, I see folks talking about Black therapists, right? I wonder how many of those are available to be able to actually, like, you know, understand when you're talking about some of this, you know, traumatic pieces that they can actually build. And if, you know, companies who are, you know, providing some of this, you know, services, they actually have diversely sourced therapists, you know, in the organization. So it's something I'm super curious about. So there's this question, and I think Monica had started it, that, you know, folks are asking, and I want to really dig in a little bit more with the rest of the folks. Executive sponsorship, right? For your ERGs, right? To make them effective. So, you know, companies, allies, you know, please listen up to this because it's really important, right? Creating ERGs without, you know, actually like power and an opportunity to engage, just saying you're going to listen to the ERGs, right? And actually not creating that opportunity to it is actually not useful. So what are best practices, right, to follow when reaching out to an executive sponsor, right, for an ERG? Can you get multiple? 1, 2, what about if executive sponsors are actually not ready to be active allies or still learning themselves, right? How do you deal with that? Right. I would love to just sit back and listen. How should people be thinking about this stuff? Monica?
To start. Okay, since I started this already, I'm sorry I jumped the gun on this question. So I can just share a little bit about how we're structured, and I think a lot of people can model something similar if they can't model it exactly. So we're global and then we're regional, right? So we have 20 hubs, we have 20 offices that have both boards or Black ERG represented in it. And so then we have our global executive sponsors. And so those again are going to be most likely your either direct report to the CEO or 1 or 2 levels below. So we try to do SVP or higher. And again, that's just based on access and advocacy and who they have access to, you know, really in terms of helping you. And so we are also really big on our goal setting. And so when we set goals for the year that we want to do as an ERG, this year, for instance, one of our exec sponsors, we actually put him in our goals. So here's a goal and here's almost an assignment that we have for you. And so he has a direct line of accountability of something that we've asked him to do and that he's obviously agreed to. So it's a mutual discussion. And then we meet quarterly to make sure we're monitoring our progress. And so again, you got to make sure they're at the right level. You do need to choose wisely to make sure they're the right type of ally, and then assign them with things to do. Because a lot of times, if they're not a Black exec, which that's few and far between, if they're not a Black exec, you might actually have to tell them what to do.
Yeah, on that point, I think when you're picking your exec sponsor or somebody volunteers to be your exec sponsor, don't assume that they're going to know what to do, right? Like Monica, to your point, they may not know. They may just honestly be excited and passionate and want to lean in and want to help. And so another best practice, I think, is bring them into your ERG, bring them into your community, have them meet with your members, have them get to know people and listen to their stories and truly get a sense for what it is that we're dealing with. And then they can have a perspective. I know we've had some great conversations around some of the systems that are currently existing in our own community, in our own businesses that we weren't even aware of, that once they were able to see the challenges we were having, we can now go and address those systems and try to make things happen and make a real change. So again, assume nothing, bring them in, let them listen, let them learn, make them part of your community. I think that's key.
I love that. Assume nothing. Akil, you have something to add there? Oh, Akil, we're not hearing you again. We'll be back to you in a moment. So the next question is around ERGs beyond sort of,
all of the ERG groups, right? It's important that we demand, quite honestly, that senior executives, those who are in the C-suite, have a rotating participation or ongoing participation in one or more ERG, and that be set out as clear goals. If you want to be a senior leader, you have to represent your entire company, right? So, there's asking and hoping and getting permission from, the C-suite to engage, and there's expecting that the C-suite is engaged. And, I think we're at a moment where, with all of the company's inclusion and diversity strategies generally for underrepresented groups, there needs to be that executive buy-in across the table. And those should be table stakes for anyone who's serious about being a senior leader in a company, period.
Ooh, I love that idea. Isn't that awesome? So companies need to, you just need to rotate. If this is part of what you need to do to become a senior leader within our company, right? That is huge. I think that is like, folks on the line, if you didn't hear that, I need you to write that down, right? That is a best practice for me. Shav, I feel like I'm gonna jump in there.
Yeah, I think it's just like one thing I want to say is just like, it's really important to underscore with exec sponsors that this is two-way learning. It's not just about you teaching and mentoring and sponsoring. You need to be open to learning yourself, unlearning, and then relearning. And then one thing that I think is like a potential risk, and you need to like just like nip in the butt if you see it happening, is like savior complex. Like, we don't need saving, right? We have amazing ideas. We have amazing like information. You can learn so much. Like, this is not about you coming in to save the day. And I think that that's something to really like to just address right off the bat. And if it's happening, to address that right off the bat, because then power dynamics come into play and it can just become really unproductive and unconstructive. So just something I would preface.
So we have to go deeper on that. It's absolutely important, right? This notion about, you know, like, you don't need a savior, right? You know, folks that are on the ERGs are doing it because it's important. Pretty smart people already. They work in the company. How do you like help, you know, leaders or people who want to be supportive get over that sort of savior complex, and just like, let's learn together, let's lean in together, right? Rather than, you know, you drop in to sign a check once in a while. How do we begin to do that? Like, how do you institutionalize things like that?
I think it starts with the community building piece. And so, I mean, I truly believe that empathy is the secret sauce, I think, to bring people together and to start to build relatedness. And I mean, what I found in my experience is when I have moments to connect with people, like on a human level, is often when the relationship blossoms, work relationship, friendships, whatever the case may be. And so I think that the more that we can create those regular opportunities at work just to connect with each other around normal human things, I think that starts to invite people in to learn about other people's experiences. And especially with leaders, I mean, one of our exec sponsors from one of our ERGs doesn't identify for the community that they're supporting, but their child does. And so their why is strictly because they want to create a better environment for their child, and they want to cultivate the inclusiveness that they would hope that their child experiences when they do enter into the workforce. And so knowing that there's so many ways that we can connect with people, just our intersectionality, I think, is really a strength here. And of course, we're laser focused talking about Black folks right now, so I don't want to sound dismissive, but I do think that in terms of engaging exec leaders and knowing that we're not always represented, and we may not always be able to find a Black leader that just gets it, I think some of these other intersectional ways that we show up can be a real rich opportunity to identify some new allies and have a human connection.
Mm-hmm. John, I see you nodding.
Yeah, I kind of going back to something that Elise said, which was, don't be afraid to ask for what you want. So to your point, if you get somebody who's coming in with that savior complex and says, hey, I want to come in here and I'll do this for you, I think we need to be comfortable enough to say, even to your C-suite exec, thank you, but here's how you can truly help me. I don't need you to go get the fish for me. I need you to help me learn how to fish for myself. So I think being clear about what it is you need, what help you need, and how they can help mentor and guide, that will be critical.
Mm-hmm. No, I love it. So Akil, I'm going to come to you in a minute. So, get yourself ready. I want to talk about, you started it earlier around sort of like the business, like the larger business initiative that an ERG can actually support with. Beyond, of course, we know table stakes is, let's support inclusion. Let's make people feel welcome. Let's make people feel engaged. That supports, companies to actually retain top talent longer. We know that, right? Now, so foundational, that is absolutely important. Every ERG should be doing that. The next piece is now, how do you support companies to like actually grow talent, to get more Black professionals in executive roles and Black tech folks in executive leadership? How do you support companies to do that but also how does ERGs enable companies, you know, from a business perspective? I would love your thought on that, Akil, if you have a moment.
Yeah, for sure. Like Shav sort of mentioned a bit of it when she started talking a little bit about opportunities to support business objectives. Like, listen, every company has a top 10, top 20 transformational list of initiatives, right, that they're working on to change the course of their organization, right? Whether it's from a technology, digitization, clients, product, etc. When you think about the market, you think about clients who are consumers of any organization, don't you want a well-rounded viewpoint of how your product would hit the market, how it would impact the market? Like, you've got an internal, like, the larger your organization, the bigger opportunity you have, but you have an internal focus group right in your organization. And, you know, the methodologies that companies use to come up with their focus groups and make sure they have representative sampling, and, you know, you have every single segment that you're trying to reach. Companies should be doing that internally with their own employee groups. And this is where the ERGs can ensure that, you know, for those top 10, top 20 initiatives in any organization, how are we seeding those initiatives with Black talent, right? Like, where are we scouring within our talent pools inside the organization to put people on those initiatives and put people on those projects, right? To participate in the definition of the value that that transformational initiative creates, right? You know, again, lots of stats and research on the more diverse your leadership team, the more diverse your organization, the better you are on the bottom line. Well, put that into action using your ERGs to seed talent on those top 10, top 20 initiatives, and be intentional about it. And back to sort of executive sponsorship, if we really have, you know, C-suite and one level below sponsoring ERGs in a rotational manner and in a true manner, those top 10, top 20 initiatives that they all sponsor anyways, there's a great opportunity for the ERG leadership to plug in and identify talent and ensure that we're seeding talent in those top 10, top 20 initiatives. That's one way to go about it.
Awesome. Monica, I wanted to lean in a little bit on, like, you know, helping move up, right? ERGs as a place to actually build capacity. You had said something, you know, when we were speaking, and you said, listen, there's amazing work that's actually happening. There's like leadership development that is happening within ERGs, right? And how do we start tying it to growth, right? I would love for you to, you know, to break that open a little bit for us.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the challenges, right? We know a lot of these roles are all volunteer roles. And so one of the things that I encourage folks to remember when they say they want to get involved is remember that you're hired for a job. So keep the job you're paid for as a priority, because that gives you access to the ERG. If you don't have the job, you're not in the ERG. But to that note, there are a number of things that we're doing with our version of like a chief diversity officer. We call it a chief equality officer. And so they're helping align the skills that you gain as an ERG leader, like presenting, public speaking, you know, leadership, things of that nature. They're helping us align those to goals and to other roles at the company, and to actually amplify those things in the work we're doing that's not just ERG focused. Again, that business kind of focus. And so you want to get support from the company to try to acknowledge that some of the work you're doing is transferable skills to an actual career. That's one of the ways I would suggest. And the other thing is your ERG should actually be supporting programming that's going to help you gain those skills to become more leaders. So we actually invest in an executive leadership development program where we're trying to getting, some access to things that we might not have access to.
Mm-hmm. So, Shab, lots of head nods. How are you thinking about this stuff?
Yeah, I'm thinking there's like a couple of things, but I agree with Monica. Like at Shopify, our ERG, even if they're not in leadership roles, they have access to all the training that our leaders go through as an opportunity for them to like lean into that space. But The one thing I think it was off the original question that you asked is like something I wanted to address, because I think a lot of companies leverage ERGs to help build like employer brand awareness. And what I find is I find a lot of leads drop into ERG channels. Here's a job posting, and then they bounce out of that. And what I always say is the opportunity for organizations is to go into those ERG communities and figure out, where can I go to meet Black talent? When is the next BPTN event that I can go and attend so that I can meet Black talent? And I think that's like something really important for organizations to like understand, which is, don't put all of the work on the ERG. Like, you need to do some work, you need to actively play a role. So that's just something that I wanted to like put out there for people who are looking to start ERGs or who have ERGs at their organizations. Is just like, if you're an ally, the opportunity for you is to learn what, like, how to build your network. So just wanted to speak to that a little bit.
To build off of that, I want to speak to the ERG leaders specifically on this point. And I think, you know, just acknowledging the fact that oftentimes ERG roles are volunteer roles, that gives you some flexibility in the sense that you can really design that experience to focus on the things that you are wanting to develop in. And so while we wait for companies to catch up and recognize ERGs for their contributions and the skills that are being built, take it upon yourself to embed your ERG work into your individual development plan. You know, think about how you can identify specific skill sets that you want to focus on. Maybe it's, you know, event planning or event management, or maybe it's public speaking or leadership presence. Those are all the types of skill sets that are transferable into your next dream role. And so as you're supporting the company in their diversity initiatives, also consider how the company can support you in your personal growth and development. And hopefully you can develop into your next dream role with the company. But if that's not the case, you at least have these skills that you can now put on your resume. ERG work should be on your resume. It is a job. And those skills can be used to get your next job, wherever that is.
Yeah, I agree with that, Anitra. I think though that needs to be super intentional, right? Like, I mean, we can hope that, you know, through the work as an ERG leader that you do is advancing the organization and helping those who are marginalized, disadvantaged, and you're helping with talent and all that. But in reality, we need to have a structured and intentional and formal recognition of the role of the ERG leader. And the ERG leader also has supporting staff, right? There might be a steering committee or something like that. We need to recognize, like, organizations need to recognize the importance and contribution and strategic value of the ERG leadership role, and very intentionally allow for performance and compensation rewards attached to the contributions of that role. So there should be very clear goals and measures established that can be evaluated, and there should be a recognition come year end for the contributions formally, not hopefully, but actually formally in the organization. And I think when people see that, you know, your time spent leading an ERG benefits you in your career, we'll have more people paying attention to and wanting to participate in ERGs, right? And joining other ERGs that maybe is not fully identifying with your background or whatever, but there will be more people focused on ERGs and growing ERGs, and the organizations need to recognize the value of the leadership of an ERG.
Love it. So there's a question here that I think, John, I'm gonna, you know, pose to you, and then, you know, open it up to the rest of the audience, or sorry, to the rest of the panelists. So, you know, there was a thought around, you know, do you sort of look at ERGs that are sort of, you know, broader, right? So ERGs that support, you know, BIPOC communities, so, you know, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, you know, more broadly, right? You know, would that provide more enriched environment and experience, right? Or, you know, separate communities that that allow you to go deeper, right? So there was a question there, and I'd love for you to answer it, and then the rest of the members just lean into it.
Yeah, and maybe I'll talk about that like more personally. So when we started, so at Microsoft, we have a Blacks at Microsoft group, and that group's been around for over 30 years, and it's just hasn't existed in Canada as a separate chapter. So there was a visible minorities group that existed, and when we started to kind of explore, when we wanted to create our ERG here, we had the opportunity of joining that group or creating something that was very unique to the Black community. And what we realized was we needed a specific voice for the specific challenges that we are facing. And I think every ERG would probably say the same thing. So while I wouldn't say that if you have a combined group or a diverse group that they don't bring value, but I believe that having something that's unique and specific to the challenges that you are facing, whether it be LGBTQ, whether it be Black, whether it be people with unique abilities, I think having that unique voice is key, and I believe that you will actually have more impact by focusing on the specific challenges that you are facing.
Yeah, and I think it's important to encourage your ERG leadership teams to speak to each other and to like create programming together. And I think there's value in having them as separate groups, but it doesn't mean that they need to work in silos. They can come together and collaborate and learn and teach. So I think that there's an opportunity to do that really intentionally.
I think
sorry, Nietzsche, please go for it.
Just to add to that, I think it also depends too on just the developmental stage of ERGs or maybe your company's diversity and inclusion program. Because I've seen success where there's some like intersectional groups that are just kind of more broadly supporting initiatives work in like an early start of a company. But I do agree that, as a company matures and as the work matures, often those groups do have individual needs, and it does help for them to be separate. So, but I think if you're a part of maybe a startup that has like 30 people, or the numbers are small, there's strength in numbers. And so having a more intersectional group will for sure support the work versus having one person leading the charge.
So I'm going to give you all sort of, 15 to 20 seconds to speak directly to the audience, right? The folks that have listened to you, business leaders that are looking to, engage more Black tech talent, both internally and externally, Black professionals who are tired and they've been leaned on for the last, 2 months, but they are committed, right? Folks that want to hire more, want to retain more, right? Retention is a problem, right? Because sometimes, company culture it may not be great. I would love for you just 10, 15 seconds, right, to talk to folks and say, what nugget do you want to leave them with? So I want to start with Monica.
Yeah, the first one is I want to make sure everyone knows if you're making decisions that impact a certain community, include that community in those decisions. I know that may sound like a no-brainer, but you would be amazed at how many emails or things that I get at the 11th hour, and they say, hey, Monica, can you take a look at this? Nobody Black was involved, and it's something for the Black community, and it's not right. So make sure you include the community you're trying to help and serve and advocate for in the decisions you're making is one thing. The other thing I would say is you will always need an ERG as long as that group is underrepresented. So make sure you're having very intentional goals at the company level. It's great to have goals as an ERG. It's great to have, things that you want to see accomplished. But again, if you don't have that advocacy and support at the executive level in the rooms where the decisions are being made, those things are not going to get done. So the goals have to be a part of that company's mission, and see if you can get them to actually advocate and add those to any written plan or formal plan that they put out annually.
Awesome. Thank you. Akil.
Yeah, sorry, I had some connection issues, so I heard some of what Monica mentioned, and hopefully I'm not being repetitive, so I apologize in advance. But 2 things. One, be intentional, right? So whatever change you want to bring about, whether it's from a talent acquisition perspective, recruitment, development, inclusive leadership, learning and development. Be intentional about your actions and set up very specific measures so you know that you're making progress. Without measures, without goals that are measurable, we cannot tell if the dial has been moved. So statements and well wishes and intentions die on the side of the road if there's no actual measures in place. So if you're starting an ERG, or if you're a leader on this call and you're looking to do something different, start with a concrete, measurable goal. Seek input from the resource group that you're trying to advocate the change for, but it needs to be measurable. That's what I would leave as a takeaway.
Thank you so much. Anitra?
Yeah, I think I want to speak to the Black employees on the call and know that, or take pride in knowing that your experience as a Black employee at your company, sorry, background noise. Take pride in your experience and know that that is enough to be in the conversation. That gives you credibility in your conversations with the leaders of your company or whichever rooms you get access to. I think so often because we view ERGs as our side jobs, or, it's not our official title, we sometimes get this, maybe feelings that we're not equipped for those conversations, or maybe we're not credible, and that's simply not true. So feel confident in knowing that your lived experience is enough to bring to that table.
Awesome. Thank you. John?
Yeah, I think the message I have would be for everyone. Whether you're a Black employee, whether you're a Black leader, whether you're an ally, I want you to think about something. Racists have picked their side. I want you to think about the last time you ran into somebody who was racist and ambiguous about it and was like, kind of, sort of, I'm not sure. They are all in. Anti-racists have picked their side, and we are saying we have to make a change. We must do something now. For anyone who's in the middle, my word to you would be to pick a side and actually do something and say, I am going to go take action to go make something happen. If you're a leader, how are you going to go make change in your systems, in your own organizations to affect change? If you're a Black employee, how can you lean in and help? And how can you help the person that comes after you? Do something. So I guess that would be my message. How do we all do something? Big, small, doesn't matter. How do we actually take a step towards making an impact?
Thank you so much. And Shav?
Yeah, I guess my message is for allies and for the organizations who have employee resource groups. Don't let this work be performative. It's not good enough to just give Black employees or employees in employee resource groups a seat at the table if you're not willing to listen and shift your perspective and get your hands dirty and do the work yourself as well. That would be my main message for people in the Black community. Please take care of yourselves. This is a marathon and we need to focus on self-care and wellness. So those would be my two messages.
Awesome. So I want to say a huge thank you to this incredible, incredible, incredible panel, right? Y'all need to give a hand and just thank them because they crushed it. Thank you all so much for leaning into this conversation. It was incredible. There's so many nuggets. I'm sure there's tweetable moments, right? I'm sure many, many people will be connecting with you. You did an awesome job. Thank you for leaning into this conversation. Thank you for your leadership, right? Thank you for your unwavering leadership. I know the work that you all do across North America, and it is needed. And this is the opportunity for us, as an ecosystem of tech, right, to actually move the needle together. I'm optimistic, right, with leaders like you at the helm. So thank you so much, right? This is the end of it, right? I want to say thank you to our panel members, right, for being just, incredible. Thank you to Elise for kicking us off and being just wonderful, right? Thank you all for leaning in and just, engaging, because it is so important, right? It is through engagement. So in BPTN fashion, right, please add us up, right, on your social, on your email. Make sure you're connected in, right? If you're not a BPTN member, do that now, right? It's complimentary, right? As an individual, either you're an ally, right, or you're from the Black tech community, right? Add us up, be connected, BFUTR 10,000 plus, October, right? Make sure you're connected in there. It's going to be incredible. 3D virtual, not on Zoom, 3D virtual. We're so excited about it, right? It's going to be really, really incredible. Again, CIBC, thank you for your leadership, right? And thank you for taking this journey with us as a tech ecosystem. We're incredibly proud to have you on board, right? And for the rest of the day, right, we're just going to play some music, right? Enjoy each other. Please, please, please network, right? Connect in. Make sure you drop your information below in the chat, right? Make sure you stay connected. So your LinkedIn, drop it in. Tell us what you do, right? So people can connect in. Now more than ever, this is the way to connect. This way, right? Do not be bougie about your information, right? Make sure you're connected in, because if we cannot connect physically, we can connect, you know, on our platform. So please be connected. Love you all. Appreciate the work you're doing. To the Black tech professionals, to our amazing panel, thank you. To our amazing keynote, thank you, right? Of course, to our allies, thank you for being here, right? And just have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. And